Deep in the rolling highlands of Emberland, a village named Brackendale sat perched on the edge of a winding river. It was a quiet place for the most part, known primarily for its rosehip pies and the occasional accordion serenade at the local pub. The villagers woke at dawn, milked their goats, and tended their farmland in tranquil routine. Their biggest fear was usually whether the annual harvest festival might get rained out. Because of that, when rumors spread of a dragon sighted on a nearby hill, it caused quite a stir. Brackendale was not the sort of place that had to deal with dragons, or so everyone thought. At first, the rumor seemed outlandish. Dragons, someone scoffed. Impossible. Dragons don't bother with towns like ours. Yet, the sightings continued. A midwife tending to a mother in a remote farmhouse declared she saw a scaly tail vanish behind a grove of oaks. A traveling peddler packing up at dusk claimed to hear a sharp sneeze from above and see a flicker of flame streak across the sky. Soon, local children began telling tall tales about fiery boogers raining down from the heavens, which got them promptly scolded by their elders. But there was no denying that something was amiss on the outskirts of Brackendale. For the most part, though, daily life carried on. The bramble hedges still needed trimming, the goats still needed feeding, and the coughed-up rumor of a fire-breathing beast was settled with a good round of eye-rolling at the evening dinner tables. Yet, nestled beyond the rolling pine forest that separated the village from the more rugged corners of Emberland, lived a young dragon who spent his days quietly lamenting a rather peculiar condition. He wasn't your ordinary, menacing, thunderous-lunged dragon. He had an unusual sensitivity in his sinuses, and that was about to become everyone's concern. The dragon known in the Hidden Valleys only as Ignatius Sneeze or simply Iggy was a rather slender, green-scaled fellow. He was not quite the hulk of a creature that roamed storybooks. He had delicate wings, a literate, curious mind. He once found a tattered scroll about advanced arithmetic and carried it around for weeks, and a penchant for wild mushrooms. However, he had one major problem. Every time he sneezed, his fire breath burst out in flamboyant, uncontrollable fashion. You might think, well, that's what dragons do, right? Sure, dragons breathe fire, but they usually intend it. Iggy's fire came out in torrents of roaring heat whenever a stray pollen, a tickle in the nose, or even a wisp of dust reached his nostrils, and for some reason, that last batch of wild mushrooms he liked to snack on led to him sneezing about 5 times as often as usual. As a result, Iggy's days were filled with perpetual attempts at stifling his sneezes. From the rickety vantage point of his favorite bluff, he pinned clothes pegs over his nostrils, clutched bunches of chamomile flowers, and tried every remedy known to the mythical forest creatures. But the moment a breeze blew just the right combination of dandelion fluff and pine pollen in his direction, he'd let out an explosive "ah-choo!" Flaming gouts would shoot from his nostrils, scorching any unfortunate patch of grass directly ahead. Sometimes it was only a small puff, and he'd hurriedly stamp out the smoking grass. Other times, he accidentally set a topless, rotted stump ablaze, forcing him to encircle it in frantic flaps of his wings until it got smothered. Poor Iggy was tormented by his fiery reflexes, and more than once he considered moving away entirely to avoid confrontation with any unsuspecting passersby. But alas, nature had other plans. On one memorable Tuesday, the wind direction right as Iggy was reposing on a large rock near the meadow edge. He felt the itch in his nose creeping up, that sinking moment of dread as the sinews in his nostrils tensed. He inhaled. He scrunched his face, and he let out a sneeze that could have shaken the bark from the sturdy oak trees. A colossal bloom of flame erupted, soared across the meadow, and surprised a small group of traveling merchants who had set up a makeshift camp for supper. Their big pot of lentil stew instantly ignited, turning their quiet meal into a raucous bonfire. Startled yelps filled the air, the pot rolled, soup sloshed, but to everyone's astonishment, the food, though somewhat charred, smelled delicious. Unable to control his embarrassment, Iggy scampered behind the boulder and peered out, wide-eyed. He expected the merchants to be furious. He braced himself for curses, for them to brandish swords or toss whatever they might have at him in self-defense. But that night, the merchants ate the smoky stew. Though the edges of their wooden spoons blackened, they discovered a surprisingly appealing flavor. Slightly singed skins of the vegetables, a robust swirl of smoky goodness in every bite. It was, unexpectedly, a novel treat, so they did what any normal band of merchants might do: they kept the cauldron going. With some rummaging in their packs, they produced onions, potatoes, salted pork, and more seasonings. Over that new roaring flame, they cooked up a feast. When they noticed Iggy timidly approaching, they found themselves thanking him, of all things. "It's never tasted so good," boomed the tallest merchant, patting his round belly. "You've invented a new style, Dragon. I'd call it flame-broiled." Embarrassed but a bit flattered, Iggy tried to say sorry, but only managed a nervous croak. The group urged him to stay around. Maybe grill a few more items if that sneeze of his returned. Feeling equal parts baffled and shy, the young dragon nodded stiffly, almost suspecting it was all a trap. But they sang songs, shared jokes, and soon, the unplanned bonfire turned into a traveling carnival of sorts. It was the first time Iggy felt welcomed rather than feared. It was also the first time humility and gratitude had replaced the usual cautionary tales surrounding dragons. In the following days, word spread. Merchants told wide-eyed villagers of the night a dragon accidentally barbecued their dinner into something divine, dubbed the Sneeze Broil Feast. Scribes traveling with them wrote the story into their journals, passing it along from one settlement to the next. Chefs whispered rumors that maybe, just maybe, they could master the secret of that smoky fire breath flavor. But nobody knew how to replicate a dragon's sneeze. Scaling up from flint and embers wouldn't give the same result. It became a culinary riddle. Meanwhile, Iggy remained unaware of the craze he had inadvertently sparked in the human communities. He retreated to his craggy outcrop each morning and tried, with limited success, to stifle any oncoming sneeze. But the next time he felt that tingling in his nostrils, he remembered the merchant's reaction. Perhaps his sneezes weren't wholly destructive if applied in just the right, if accidental, manner. This new perspective gave him a shred of hope. He occasionally scoured meadows for potential cooking experiments, though he could hardly approach a farm at risk of scorching entire fields. One day he happened upon a lost picnic hamper abandoned in the forest. Without quite knowing what to do, he rummaged through it, found some leftover bread and raw sausages, then promptly sneezed. He didn't even feel the itch coming that time. A short arc of flame toasted the bread and blazed the sausages into crispy perfection, though one poor sausage ended up cinder black in seconds. Tasting them, he realized this is the same smoky tang the merchants marveled over. He whooped in delight, but also realized with a sigh that it was all an accident. If only he had control, he might actually be able to cook on purpose. The next Saturday, while meandering near a different meadow, Iggy noticed a line of villagers from Brackendale, all clad in bright aprons and colorful hats, setting up stalls and wooden tables. They seemed to be preparing for some grand event, with woven banners announcing a harvest cookout ceremony. His curiosity piqued, the dragon sneaked closer. He crept behind the tall hedges, peering around them with wide reptilian eyes. The villagers bustled about with baskets of tomatoes, peppers, corn, and mead. Musicians tuned their fiddles and accordions. Bakers rehearsed their egg basting, making pies, but none of them were paying attention to the tree line, so Iggy drew nearer, both intrigued and terrified. Suddenly, an official-looking man with a thick mustache announced, hear ye, we are set to host the greatest barbecue in all of Emberland. The problem is, we're short on the finishing flame. Our usual pit boss has caught a dreadful cold, so we're behind. If only we could start the grill quickly and bring that seasonal smoky flavor to life." Several villagers groaned in frustration, prodding at unlit logs with a faint spark from a flint that barely coughed any ember. The official man paced back and forth, lamenting that half the invited guests might show up to raw vegetables and no roasted meats. Well, Iggy's heart pounded. He popped his scaly head out from the hedges just a bit. If only he could help. But what if they recognized him as the rumored dragon and tried to drive him away? He recalled the merchant group's cheerful acceptance, though. Could that happen again? He was half tempted to slink back to his cave. Yet the desire to do something worthwhile to prove he wasn't just a clumsy walking flamethrower spurred him on. Step by tremulous step, he trudged into the clearing. All heads turned in an instant. The musicians froze mid-tune. A woman unloading potatoes nearly dropped the entire sack. The official man gaped, wide-eyed. Despite his nerves, Iggy managed a small wave of his clawed forearm. "Excuse me," he rasped, his voice deep yet shaking. "I couldn't help overhearing. You need a flame?" A child gasped, pointing. "It's the fiery booger dragon!" An elderly woman exclaimed, "He's real!" Another set of villagers muttered in hushed voices about the rumor. A few were obviously frightened, inching back behind wooden tables. But the official man, swallowing hard, drew closer and said, "Yes, in fact we do. But are you are you friendly?" Iggy deeply inhaled. Quite the risk, with so many pollen-laden flowers around. "I promise, I mean no harm. I only ever cause trouble by accident. But if you want your logs lit, I can do that with a single sneeze. My name is Iggy. Let me help." Feeling his own sinuses tingle ominously, the dragon hurried up to the pit of logs. "Just stand back," he cautioned. "I can't always control my aim." The villagers scampered out of the way. Iggy tried to conjure a small flame in his throat, but ironically, he developed a mild headache from all the stress, and the typical unstoppable sneeze refused to come forth on cue. Instead, he sneezed a feeble puff of black smoke that drifted only inches beyond his snout. The logs remained unlit. Iggy flushed in embarrassment, rummaging for a stray dandelion to tickle his nose. A child hesitantly offered him a fluffy seed head, and Iggy carefully brought it near his nostril. "Here goes! Aha! Aha! Choo!" A swirling column of flame burst out, igniting the logs to a roaring blaze. The villagers cheered, bounding forward with pots and trays of skewered vegetables. They fanned the flame, carefully placing grills over it. Overcome with excitement, they slapped Iggy on the back, though not too hard, since patting a dragon's scales can be awkward. He apologized for the small bonfire hazard, but the official man beamed. "Giggy, well done! You've saved the barbecue, friend!" Before the villagers could start cooking, someone let out a small cry. "It's too big a flame! Everything will burn in seconds!" Indeed, the logs crackled fiercely. The roaring flames licked dangerously close to a row of wooden crates filled with ears of corn. But how to control it? Iggy, red-faced, quickly flapped his wings in wild arcs, trying to reduce the flame's intensity. It turned out to be an excellent idea, and his fanny soon created a manageable, even heat. The villagers, who'd been alarmed for a moment, burst into applause. As the harvest cookout got underway, the humans discovered, quite by accident, the mouth-watering effect of cooking over short bursts of dragon flame. The carrots caramelized with smoky edges, the corn husks blackened delightfully to reveal golden kernels inside, and the sausages sizzled to perfection. And not just that, the distinct tanginess from Iggy's swirling embers gave everything a unique signature taste, like an exotic spice they'd never encountered. Soon there was a line around the scorching pit, eager to have their morsels licked by just the right measure of flame. To Iggy's merriment, no one was shooing him away. In fact, the villagers welcomed him to sample their harvest. He cowered at first, uncertain if it was a trick, but quickly found them gracious and friendly. A jolly older man wearing a chef's hat plopped a toothpick-speared sausage into Iggy's mouth, and he let out a satisfied hum. That was the first time in ages that he'd been able to enjoy companionship without worrying about terrifying people unintentionally. But sneezes are, of course, unpredictable. Halfway through the festivities, while Iggy was trying to politely blow on someone's small turkey skewer with measured warmth, 3 tiny bees from a nearby hive flew too close to his nostrils. Uh-oh! It was immediate. His chest rose, his eyes bulged, and a thunderous inhalation announced a monstrous Asha, oh. A blinding gush of flame shot into the air, soared over the cooking pit, and soared straight toward a large oak tree that had the misfortune of shedding pollen at exactly the wrong time. A collective gasp echoed across the clearing as the ancient oak's branches began to smolder. Children screamed. Adults scrambled to find buckets, rags, anything to douse the potential blaze. Panicking, Iggy braced his muscles and flapped his wings as vigorously as he could. Swish, 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 he aimed gusts of wind at the flames, which flickered and hissed. Several villagers joined in with buckets, flinging water at the smoldering bark. Eventually, after a tense minute, the tree was left only lightly scorched and smoking at the tips of its leaves. Relieved gasps spread through the crowd. Iggy sank to his haunches, burying his face in his clawed hands. "I'm so sorry," he sniffed, tears threatening to swirl in the corners of his reptilian eyes. The villagers patted his scaly back, murmuring that everything was all right. The official man stepped forward. "Young dragon," he said kindly, "your help has been invaluable to us, but your sneezes are indeed, well, quite a hazard. We want to see if there's a safe way to harness them. Could we possibly ask you to remain for the cookout? If it gets too risky, we'll figure something else out." Wiping a tear away gingerly with the tip of his wing, Iggy nodded. "I can try to keep my distance when I feel the sneeze coming. I want to help, but I don't want to cause any more accidents." He climbed a little way up a hill overlooking the pit, determined to keep a vantage point that wouldn't send flames directly into the crowd. With encouraging calls from below, the dragon attempted to moderate his blasts, some controlled, others a bit wilder. Encouragingly, whenever an item needed a quick flambe, they'd call up to Iggy with a request like, "Over here roasted peppers," or "We need just a scorch on these spare ribs, please," or even, "Don't burn the marinade, though." Slowly, the festival shifted from panic to laid-back merriment once again. Fiddle tunes returned, the mead got poured, the dancing started. Laughs abounded whenever Iggy sneezed. Whenever they saw the huge belch of fire, the crowd parted like the sea, clearing a path for the flame to soar harmlessly into the sky. The comedic spectacle of a sneezing dragon might have been terrifying in many a village, but here it became a highlight and event to coordinate around. Children took to shouting, "Duck and cover," in delight, rather than fear, whenever Iggy's face scrunched in that dreaded pre-sneeze expression. As the sun sank behind the forest, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, the harvest cookout reached its peak. Tables overflowed with dishes, some so thoroughly flame-broiled that they had to saw off the char before eating. Others were crafted to the perfect temperature, zesty and aromatic. The once startled villagers had become gastronomic adventurers, exploring new flavors that only a sneezy dragon's breath could deliver. Jugglers juggled flaming torches that they ignited by standing a few yards from Iggy's snout. Minstrels composed silly lyrics about the great sneezy pew, singing "He huffs and he puffs from muzzle to tail, and outbursts of flame that blackens our kale, but oh how we love the taste so bold. We'll keep the sneezy dragon till we're all grown old." Near the central bonfire, Iggy found himself surrounded by a group of youngsters. They begged for a story. "Tell us about your home," someone piped up. Another chimed in, "Did you hatch from a giant egg?" Yet another asked in a quavering voice, "Could you teach me how to breathe fire?" Iggy gave a bashful grin. He explained that his parents had likely roamed far beyond Emberland's mountains. He'd grown up largely on his own, learning to survive with a combination of caution and curiosity. As for teaching them to breathe fire, well, he teased that he hadn't quite mastered it himself, which earned a round of giggles. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel so alone. These humans showed genuine fascination. They asked about his scales, about whether he'd encountered trolls or even other dragons. He recounted how he once glimpsed a distant silhouette of a grand golden dragon in the eastern sky, but never actually met his kin. "Honestly, I haven't had much luck making friends," he admitted, "since, the sneezes." In the glimmer of firelight, many listening eyes softened with sympathy. "Well, you've got friends now," said a kindly baker, offering him a steaming pastry. "Sneeze or no sneeze." Iggy gently accepted the pastry and savored its sweet, honeyed filling. It was a night of revelations for everyone. The villagers learned that not all dragons are menacing, gold-hoarding beasts that terrorize farmland. And Iggy learned that, with acceptance and a little caution, even a sneeze-laden quirk can bring people together in unexpected ways. He had turned from a rumored menace to the star of the cookout. Yes, an occasionally hazardous star, but a hero of the festivities all the same. Just when the festive mood had reached a cozy lull, musicians strumming gentle tunes, bellies full, kids dozing at their parents' feet, a flamboyant swirl of carriage lanterns appeared on the main road. It was a group of traveling bards and merchants who got wind of Brackendale's strange alliance with a dragon barbecue. They rolled in with showy flamboyance, prattling about how they sold the finest spices to enhance any dish. When they saw Iggy, they hollered in excitement. "It's him! The sneeze broil dragon!" A ruckus erupted as they brandished dried peppers and jars of exotic marinade, all wanting a chance to see if a well-timed sneeze could transform their goods into something sensational. Iggy, flattered yet overwhelmed, found himself at the center of swirling attention. People jockeyed for position near his muzzle, brandishing wooden skewers, metal pokers, and shallow pans. The official man tried to moderate the chaos, but it was too late. Corn dust, pepper flakes, and spice powder started flying in the excitement. More than a few stray seasonings found their way up Iggy's nostrils. And that's when the mother of all sneezes arrived. He tried to hold it back, but there was no stopping a swirl of chili pepper and black pepper corns inside a giant dragon nose. Ah! 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 Ah ha ha! Fire burst forth with a roar that sent caravans rolling backward on their axles. Scorched bits of marinade soared into the sky. Meat, vegetables, and tablecloth corners flew like confetti from the shockwave. People dove behind barrels, while half-ignited spices smoldered in the grass. Even the official man's mustache got singed on one end. A hush fell over the clearing as everyone stared at the smoldering chaos. But just then a sweet and tangy aroma wafted through the air, carrying with it the scent of thoroughly flame-seared peppers and marinated bits of chicken or fish. Nobody was certain. Gradually, gastronomic curiosity overpowered the shock. They lifted lids off charred pots, rummaged for whatever might remain intact, and discovered the most robust, mouth-watering, smoky pepper sensation known to humankind. The travelers themselves, once recovering from their singed eyebrows, excitedly exclaimed that they'd never tasted anything so exquisite and bold. Laughter erupted, a relieved, joyous laughter that spread from one corner of the clearing to the other. Far from condemning Iggy, they embraced the chaos as part of the evening spectacle. Sneeze BQ mania was in full bloom. With many a comedic flourish, the festival resumed. People toasted each other with mugs of mead, shared plates of char-grilled peppers, and declared in unison that Iggy's unstoppable sneezes had created the grandest barbecue feast in the history of Imberland. It was a comedic triumph of community spirit, acceptance, and a hearty appetite for something new, burnt edges and all. By the time the moon rose high overhead and the last fiddler set down his bow, many villagers had dozed off by the embers of the great bonfire. The traveling bards were cooing lullabies, while some folks used half-charred tablecloths as makeshift blankets. Iggy himself crouched near the perimeter, feeling both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. He gazed upon the dozing festival-goers with a content heart. Never had he dreamed that his terrible, unstoppable sneezes could bring joy instead of destruction, and somewhere in the hush, he realized that perhaps this was only the beginning. There were other towns beyond Brackendale, fairs that might want a dash or a sneeze of flavor. He smiled quietly to himself, though the thought of wandering so many places felt both exciting and intimidating. Before his eyelids fluttered shut for a restful doze, the official man and the kindly baker tiptoed over. They set a small wreath of wildflowers around Iggy's neck. "Thank you," whispered the official man, offering a respectful bow. "You've made this the most memorable harvest cookout in generations. We'd be honored if you visited again." Iggy nodded, his snout twitching at the floral scent. But he didn't sneeze. Maybe his nose had finally had enough for one day. Instead, feeling full and appreciated for the first time in his life, he curled himself into a gentle circle. The moonlight bathed his green scales, and the quiet crackle of dying embers lulled him to sleep. He wasn't just a misfit dragon with an embarrassing sneeze anymore. He was the star of the Sneeze BQ, a living legend whose unexpected talent had ignited a festival of warmth, camaraderie, and culinary delight. Night passed peacefully. When dawn arrived, Iggy stretched his wings and took flight, gliding over the dew-sparkled meadow. Below him, villagers stirred awake, rubbing their eyes, giggling anew at the remnants of the night's chaos. Though he had to leave for a time, he knew in his heart he'd always be welcome back. As he soared toward the distant peaks, he felt more certain than ever that being different could sometimes be a gift in disguise. He wasn't sure where the next sneeze would take him, but at least now he had something infinitely more precious than treasure: acceptance, and just maybe a sense of belonging. And so, the memory of the sneezing dragon lingered on in Brackendale, reminding everyone that life's most unexpected quirks can bring people and dragons closer together, especially when accompanied by a hearty dose of laughter, grilled onions, and just the slightest brush of flame. And whenever the harvest season rolled around again and the villagers longed for that special smoky taste, they'd glance at the hilltops, wondering if they would spot a flicker of green wings overhead, followed by a great, glorious achoo that could spark the merriest barbecue around.